Welcome back, everyone, to BBB Sharing. I'm Evie, Director of Ignite, sparked by BBB. I have my CEO and President, Barry Moore, of the Better Business Bureau here in Central Virginia. And then I also have two gentlemen here by surprise with me today. Barry loves surprises. I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
So yes, Apostolos Perelas. I'm one of the faculty at VCU Health.
And I'm Vipul Patel. I'm also a faculty at VCU Health in Department of Medicine.
Perfect. And what do you guys do at VCU Health?
So I'm running the pulmonary fibrosis program for the last 4 years. And Dr. Patel just joined us 3 months ago, and he's building a lung transplant program at VCU.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have just joined the VCU to develop the lung transplant program along with the surgeons.
VCU Health is huge right now.
Yep.
I don't think, like Barry said before, people don't realize how big of a program it actually is, how big of a hospital it is. What do you think of it so far?
So far, it's very attractive. There is a lots of volume and support is very huge.
Barry, you're a little bit more familiar with the gentleman.
Yeah. Because, I've dealt with, and I've just talked about this before we started recording. So I've been treated, Virginia urology with prostate cancer first, then up in Pittsburgh, radiation, when I lived up there. Now I'm back here, and we found Dr. Susan Hung through Massey, and Debbie Johnson's on the board there, said, immediately, you're going to see Dr. Hung. Thank God I did. She's awesome. Then we know Dr. Wally Smith with sickle cell for about 15 years. I've been trying to help him raise awareness and money, and he's trying to raise $1 million, which is a drop in a bucket when you talk about VCU Health and all of the money spent here about sickle cell. And we've interviewed him here, and he sat right there with Dr. Perelas' city, and we've talked about sickle cell and how they can cure. If they had the $1 million, we have 2 or 3 U.S., and this is knowledge for you, 2 or 3 U.S. pharmaceutical companies that have cures for sickle cell, very painful disease. And they want to see Smith, who's world-renowned, wants to see him raise $1 million. That's the threshold, and then they'll get it active here in this town.
Yeah.
They'll cure people that are in massive pain that could die. He's got about 500. He needs the money to funnel them down to about 50 that can get treated and cured. And then, Evie, we did, you've come up with the idea, UV health.
Oh, the UV safety.
Safety.
Yes.
And we're going to do that with Andrew Popovlak, I believe it is,
Yes.
is a doctor from VCU. He'll be on in July and doing the event here.
Yep.
But these gentlemen, so my experience with VCU Medical is personal, right? Nobody can tell you. I can say whatever I want. So I'm a patient. Okay, so it's out of the closet, and I've been treated twice. So that's great. But then there's other things, and I learned about from different areas, pulmonary fibrosis. And I've met now 5 people in the last 4 months who say, Mom and Dad either had it, they're gone, have it being treated, all right here in the area. So do we know where it comes from, pulmonary fibrosis?
Well, it's a very generic term. So we have more than 200 conditions that can cause pulmonary fibrosis. And if you look, it's not a very common disease, but it's not a super rare one as well.
Yeah.
As we get older, you see the prevalence of pulmonary fibrosis of any type increasing. So essentially, the term describes more than 200 conditions that can cause inflammation or scarring of the lungs. The most important, most significant, and probably the second most common is a condition we call idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF. And that's the term that most people will use when they're describing their fibrosis. However, the most common type of scarring of the lungs is from some autoimmune disease. Things like scleroderma, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus can many times manifest with scarring of the lungs. And the scarring can be anything from something very, very mild and very indolent that will never progress to something that can be very life-threatening, many times requiring a lung transplant.
Now, can you talk about what are the symptoms before somebody should call you? I mean, obviously
Yes.
a cough or...
Yes, so symptoms can be very non-specific. Like most people will report a cough, or they will say, listen, I was able to go up 3 flights of stairs with no problems. Now I started getting out of breath. So it doesn't scream. It will start slowly. And then again, it being not a very common disease affecting mostly people above the age of 55 or 60, they will think, okay, it must be my heart, or it must be my COPD, or it must be asthma. Very, very few people will think that it's pulmonary fibrosis, and actually very few doctors will think it's pulmonary fibrosis from the beginning.
Right.
So this is the symptoms. Many people can manifest with a cough, so they will just have this persistent cough that doesn't go away. And sometimes, especially with people with autoimmune disease, they will maybe having manifestations from their joints, so maybe having joint aches, joint stiffness, muscle aches, muscle weakness. And this can be sometimes the first sign that something may be going on with their lungs as well.
You know, it's funny. You see people on oxygen, right, Evie, and you see them, and they must have smoked. Yeah, that's the first thing you assume, right, Dr. Patel?
Yeah.
And it's not the case.
No, it's not the case. I mean, pulmonary fibrosis patients have some history of smoking, or people think it's contributing to the pulmonary fibrosis, but it's yet to be found that what causes the pulmonary fibrosis. But as Dr. Perelas said, lots of time, it's connective tissue disease or autoimmune disease that causes the pulmonary fibrosis.
Also, many times exposures, like we are in Virginia Beach, Newport News, they have big shipyards, right? You have asbestos that can cause a type of pulmonary fibrosis called asbestosis. Also, we know that exposure to things like farms or mold or birds can also cause a different type of pulmonary fibrosis we call hypersensitive pneumonitis. So we have more than 200 conditions. Essentially, you classify them into scarring that happens because of something that is known, like an exposure, a medication, or some type of an autoimmune disease, or fibrosis that is caused by an unknown cause, among which, again, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, is the most significant one.
And as you mentioned, you have passed through cancer. Some cancer drug also can cause pulmonary fibrosis.
Great, thanks.
Not to scare you.
I had a bird. That's going to be it, right?
Yeah.
I got to get checked. Any questions for that?
So my grandmother actually carried around oxygen growing up. So I'm from Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Greece went through a couple different wars,
How do you say? Could you translate that for me? Can you talk in Greek?
No, dear.
Come on, let's see you do it. You said you can.
He is from Greece.
Let's see. Say it.
Καλώς
Say it.
ήρθατε.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Το όνομά μου είναι Βανθία Καραγιώργο.
See that? We can do it. We got a little Greek show going. I like that. Go ahead.
I come from Carpenisi, Britannia, but my grandmother was from the mountains in Parquio, which is basically a ghost town now. But because of a lot of the different wars and stuff and being exposed, this is the story that my parents told me to the conditions there. She had to carry around oxygen. And I'm not sure if this could lead to any pulmonary issues, but I did grow up watching her basically my whole life with oxygen.
Could it be? Could it be tied to that?
Well, it depends. Also indoor pollution for these people. If she grew up in Greece, they, used like indoor stove, they can actually have some very bad type of COPD, not from smoking, but from getting exposed to all this indoor pollution and the indoor stoves. Interestingly, some of the areas, but more in the north part of Greece, actually have a very high concentration of asbestos in the environment. So it's naturally occurring. So you can get exposed to that just by breathing the air in your area, but not Carpenisi. It's more.
Carpenisi,
It's a bit more north than
That's why I
Carpenisi.
always tell them, I'm like, the air quality there is always green. You don't have to.
It was great hearing you speak Greek. You always say you can, but I don't
You guys
understand.
never, because I don't have anyone to talk to.
I know. I love the language, but inside secret, I assumed Dr. Perelas could speak Greek.
Oh yeah,
Because he went to school there, by the way.
Okay.
Right?
I grew up there as well. Yeah, so I've been there. I've been here now for 11 years. I grew up in Greece. I went to school in Greece. Yeah.
So you speak Greek.
I mean, yeah.
Me and Dr. Patel, not yet.
No.
You will learn.
Yeah.
You will learn.
Yeah.
Working with the two of you. So how did you wind up here?
Yeah, actually, it's the opportunity came to develop this program as I'm working in the lung transplant field for almost 10 years. I worked in the very high volume centers in the United States, starting from Arizona, New Jersey, and Maryland. And the administrative team here, like looking to start the program, and they approached me, and the connection happens, and I see this as an opportunity for people who are living in Richmond and people who are living in Norfolk, Newport News area, where they have to travel a lot for lung transplant surgery and follow-up. It's not just a surgery, but it's lots of follow-up required, like to make sure that the post-lung transplant, whatever the new lungs coming in, they are remaining safe and in good condition, and that's what the major part of the lung transplantation. And one of the major reason for the lung transplant is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis.
And this is what we had when we first started. It was, if you look at the United States, there was this big void when it comes to advanced lung care, especially for pulmonary fibrosis and transplant in the middle of Virginia, right? If you look at the centers for transplant, they're at UVA, which is west of the states, and Innova. But if you look at the central and eastern part, which about close to 4 or 5 million people, they had very limited access. I mean, they had to travel for more than an hour and a half to get care. And traveling for somebody with on oxygen, you need to take into account a lot of things, right? Is the tank going to last me for an hour and a half and an hour and a half to come back? How easy it's going to be for me to, park? Or it's very important to improve access, because improving access results in better care.
Yeah. And being in Richmond and being from New Jersey originally, so UNOS is right here, United Network of Organ Sharing. And my friend Lisa Schaffner ran the media part of that, and we lost her a couple of years ago. She passed away. But I used to do a lot of events with them. And I know I was in the car business for 40 years, so I know cars have gotten safer. There were barely seatbelts there when I started. And now, what does that mean, Barry? Well, it means less organs available from traffic accidents because cars are protecting, knowing they're bobbing and weaving and stopping. So now the organs are really, you have to have a deceased person for an organ transplant.
That's correct.
You can't take just one if you need two.
No, it depends on the patient to patient. Like, some patients can survive with one lung. Some patients survive with the needed 2 lungs. And that's what we discussed as a team before. But also, like, giving you answer to your question is not just like auto accidents that provides us, like, most of there are not major donors. Now as we are in opioid epidemic, majority of the donors have opioid overdose, and that lead to
voids them out.
Right.
It voids it, right?
Yeah.
Well, was it over 300 a day?
Right.
Yeah,
from
opioids.
overdose?
We're doing a lot of work here with the fentanyl. Evie's doing a program with DEA and Virginia State Police and Attorney General.
Right.
And it's that people don't even realize it. Right. So that's why we do this podcast, to get the word out.
Right.
And we see in our ICUs every day, if you look the number of drug overdoses is pretty high. Like it's a routine admission to our ICU for a drug overdose. And some people you're able to catch them in time. Some other times it just end up brain dead. Yeah.
And it's killing the organ. I mean, once they stop breathing with the oxygen flow, whatever, it damages them. And we've had 5 last month in the state, middle-aged kids, fentanyl overdose. They're dead, under 14 years of age. Yeah. We got a serious problem. So that there's children that could give an organ for cystic fibrosis, those lungs for a child maybe, but the child died of fentanyl poisoning. Yeah. So we're going to do a second follow-up with them, another sharing, but we'll let you wrap it up. But I got some interesting questions. I hope you do too.
I don't have any questions.
Yes, you do. We want to. You do. You always do. We want to know more about both of you. What it took to become the vision to become a surgeon or a doctor or a PA or a nurse. The medical field is so in need of help in certain areas. So I'd like to talk about that the next episode.
Right. I'm going to ask Dr. Perelas to answer.
All right, good. Well, we'll do that in the next one. Go ahead, you can finish it up.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to follow and comment on the post down below. We always love to hear feedback from you all as well. Thank you.